Welcome to Learn Extra Business Studies. In this lesson, we are going to focus on the direct questions where you really, if you study your work thoroughly, this is where you are going to get your marks. So let's get right into it. The first question over here, explain 4 ways in which the employer or manager can help to reduce the stress levels of employees in the workplace. You can see there are 2 key things. They want 4 ways in which it can be reduced and what stress levels of employees in the workplace. Now just think for yourself. If you are under stress, what are the type of things that you can actually do to reduce those stress levels? Now exactly the same applies in the workplace. What is it that the employer can do to reduce the stress levels of the workers, to make sure that they remain efficient and that they can contribute towards the efficiency and the productivity of the business? Now, firstly, I would suggest one thing that's definitely going to reduce the stress levels of your workers would be if you coach them properly. Because if people know how to do their job, it's going to make them stress less, because they're not going to worry about what is it that I've got to do now, etc. So definitely we need to look at coaching, making sure that your workers are ready and they know how to do the job. So coaching and mentoring would normally go hand in hand. So where you've got someone already in the job who can guide the person and show them exactly how to master whatever it is that they need to be able to do in the job. So that's always one thing that's definitely going to make the workers feel far less anxious, and it will reduce their stress levels. Right. Secondly, we can, for example, by means of our performance appraisals, we can reduce stress levels. How? Well, by appraising the worker and by allowing the worker to also communicate to management exactly what their expectations are, how they would like to see themselves and where they would like to see themselves in the future, what perhaps extra responsibilities they would like to take on. They can respond to what they found easy during the past year, what has been difficult for them, what made it more difficult for them to do their job, all those kind of things. So by communicating, it can really assist and help the worker, because then management can also see what they can do to help the worker perform or do their job better. And quite often in businesses, they are going to have like a mid-term or mid-year appraisal, and then the final one at the end of the year. Thirdly, another thing that you could do to assist or to help is, of course, always motivation. There's nothing that's going to reduce stress levels like motivating your workforce, because people are going to want to do the job and they're going to be excited about the job. And if they feel motivated, it's definitely going to reduce those stress levels. Fourth one would be rewards and incentives. We all know that always works well. If you know, if you accomplish a particular job and you have done well and you've contributed towards the success of the business, that you are also going to share in that success. It could be in the form of bonuses. It could be the fact that because the workers were motivated and they worked very hard, and because of reduced stress levels they were so efficient that the business made more money, that the workers are definitely going to benefit financially. So a reward and incentive system will definitely help to reduce those stress levels. Another one, fifth one, could be team building. Because, I mean, you normally work with other people in the business, and it's important that the workers work as a team and that they can actually support each other And where I may fall short on certain skills, there could be somebody else who can guide me and assist me and help me. And together as a team, we can help to get the business to accomplish its goals. Teamwork will also help to reduce the stress of the individual employees. Another one, 6, because we need 12 marks here. I would say better working conditions. Because if your working conditions are conducive, you are definitely going to be able to operate at a much higher and more efficient level. And that will also help to reduce the stress levels of the worker, because if you don't have the resources that you require to be able to do the job, that in itself is definitely going to add to your stress. But if the working conditions are good, it will help the workers to be able to do their job. Now, very important that you always look at your mark allocation. You can see here 12 marks, so you've got to have at least 6 relevant facts. And also important that you answer these questions in full sentences. You don't only want to write down the keywords like I did. So you've got to write down the full sentence. So the keyword that I wrote down together with that explanation, that will definitely give you 2 marks per fact. So it's very important that you bear that in mind. Full sentences is going to give you the marks. Let's just give an extra one. Right? We need 6 times 2 for 12 marks. Let me give you another one. Open communication. It ties up with the appraisal. If there's an open communication policy, where when workers have certain matters that they would like to have addressed, for example, lack of resources, that they feel free to communicate this. When they encounter any problems, that they feel free to communicate, that there's communication between management and the workers and amongst the workforce as well. All those things will definitely help to reduce the stress levels and add to the efficiency of the business. Right, so we've got our 6 facts. We're going to get our 12 marks. Let's move on to the next question. In question 2, give any 3 reasons why a partnership could be regarded as a good form of ownership. So over here we're looking at forms of ownership, and it's for 6 marks. 3 reasons why you think a partnership is a good form of ownership. Well, to start off with, what about the fact that there are no legal formalities? Right, there are no legal formalities to comply with when you establish a partnership. So they're not all those documentation that you have to complete. You've got to go to some other office and submit it, fees payable, etc. For partnership, all that you need is your trading license, and then you can start to operate as the partnership. So that's definitely one of the advantages. The second one, I would suggest that in comparison to a sole trader, for example, that with a partnership you have other people who can add to wherever you may fall short. You have other people to share responsibilities with. Right, so you can share responsibilities with your co-partners. That would definitely be another advantage of a partnership. And bear in mind the fact that there's more than one owner. So usually you're going to be able to raise more capital. Again, if we compare to a sole trader, for example. So more capital can be raised. Right, because you can go up to as many as 20 or sometimes even more partners. So each and every partner can contribute capital, and in that way it will make it actually easier to start the business. So we wanted 3, we're going to get 2 marks each again, and that will give us the 6 marks. Let's go to question 3. In question 3, state. It's also important to look at the words. Explain, describe, list, name, state exactly what is it that they would like you to do. If they said explain, it means you're going to have to elaborate a little bit on each of the features or characteristics. So state are going to be shorter type of answers. State any 5 entrepreneurial qualities that a successful business is measured against. So what are the typical qualities that an entrepreneur should have to be able to make a success of a business? Now, from research, if you look at people who have been successful in business, the first one is always that people who start their own businesses do have to be prepared to take calculated risks. So that's going to be the first one. So as an entrepreneur, you must be prepared to take that risk, because you're going to risk your money, you're going to risk your time, all those type of things. It's your own money that you are investing in the business, and unless you make a success of it, you're going to lose that money and all the time that you've actually invested also in making a success of the business. A second one would be good leadership qualities, because you are going to have employees, you are going to employ people, you're going to have to work with those people. So you've got to be a good organizer. You've got to be able to organize the staff, yourself, and all the activities that needs to be done. So that's going to require good management and leadership qualities from you. So that would be a second one. Third one, you must always be on the lookout for profitable opportunities. So you've got to continuously scan the environment out there. And when those opportunities arise, you've got to be able to take that and seize that opportunity and use it to your advantage. So that would be a third one. Look out for those opportunities. Like, for example, new markets that you could expand into, or maybe a new area that's just been developed, and a new shopping center that's open, and that you feel there's a need for the products that you manufacture or sell. You can actually take that opportunity and take your business there. So that's the third one. Fourthly, you could, if you had good communication skills, like we've seen with reducing the stress levels, you're going to have to be able to communicate firstly with the people who work for you, but also your customers. And customer service is so important. You must make your customers feel welcome. The customers must feel that they get a good service when they come to your business. So it's important that you are able to communicate with the customers and with your workers, because that will help you to make a success of your business. And even with your suppliers and other stakeholders, you are going to have to be able to communicate with these people. Fifthly, you always need to have a positive outlook. Right? So there must be a positive outlook. You need to remain positive all the time, because there will be times when it's going to be difficult. That goes together with perseverance, isn't it? You're going to have to be determined. You're going to have to persevere and stay focused on what it is that you do best, and remain positive, because you are going to take those dips. It's not always going to go well. A lot of successful entrepreneurs have actually failed, and they stood up again and they restarted, and they eventually became very successful. So it's very important that you stay positive. So those would be 5. So once again, you can see 10 marks, you need 5 valid facts. Let me give you another one. We'll give you an extra one. Your resources. It's very important that you manage your resources effectively, that you utilize those resources, whatever they are in the business. It could be a vehicle, it could be equipment, and your human resource, of course, also would be the workers. So whether it's a physical resource or your staff, it's very important that you manage them efficiently, because the staff, after all, are the people who are going to help you to make a success of your business. Right, so once again, straightforward. If you've studied this section, you know the work, you give 5 qualities of an entrepreneur that will help to make a success of the business, you answer in full sentences, you're going to get your 10 marks here. Let's look at the next question. Right, in question number 4, you can say, see again, it's very similar to the previous ones. Name 4 characteristics of a team. What is it about the team that they want us to answer that will make it possible for the team to achieve its goals? So if you are a team member, what is it that you can do to contribute towards the success of that team? That's exactly what they want here. How many marks? 8 marks. 4, so that means we are once again going to get 2 marks per relevant fact. So we need to look at 4 things that we can contribute towards making a success of our team. So let's get right into it. Firstly, I think it's always important that each team member should know the role that they have to play and what their responsibilities are going to be. Otherwise, it's going to lead to confusion. If I don't know exactly what is expected of me, it can also lead to arguments, because now we're not clear about what each person is supposed to be doing. So the role and functions that you are going to play in that team needs to be communicated clearly and in advance, because that will help you to make sure that you are going to be able to carry out the tasks that were given to you to the best of your ability. So that's always critical to make a success of a team, to know exactly what role you're going to play in that team. Secondly, the team members must be able to trust each other. Unless you can trust that the other people in the team are going to contribute, and that you can rely on them to also do whatever it is that they have to do, because they're also going to get their allocated tasks. And if somebody else failed to carry out their tasks, it's going to make it very difficult for you to perform your tasks. So each member must actually pull their weight and contribute whatever is expected of them. So I've got to be able to trust my fellow team members that they will do whatever is necessary and that they're capable of doing that. Thirdly, I would say that the team must make decisions together, that we don't have one person dominating all the time and deciding for everybody else. That as a team we should get together, we should discuss exactly what it is that we have to do and come to a mutual decision as well. That will make for a successful team. Right, a fourth one, that we definitely need to have the necessary skills. And I think that ties in with that one about trust. That I must be competent enough to be able to carry out the tasks that were given to me. I must be able to perform those tasks, because if I can't, it's going to make life much more difficult for the rest of the team. And they're now going to have to help me out, and that's going to perhaps make it more difficult for them to complete their tasks as well. So we've got to be able to do that which is required of us, because that will also help with the trust part of making the team successful. Right, so that's what we needed. We needed 4, and those would definitely be 4 critical characteristics of a successful team. And let's give another one like I've done with the others. What about always sharing in our success? We need to actually celebrate our success. That's very important when we've achieved something. That as the team members, we actually need to celebrate that, because that's again going to motivate us for the next project that we have to carry out. Let's look at the next question. Question 5. Describe. So here definitely we need to have a sentence, full sentence. any 4 aspects that may lead to conflict in a workplace. Right, so what are the typical things that could result in conflict in the workplace? So if we look at that team, what is it that's going to make us less successful, and where we actually start to clash as team members and as colleagues? What are the typical things that could cause conflict? And they want 4. Well, definitely communication. Right, so many times this has come up. It will reduce stress levels when we communicate effectively. To be successful as a team, we've got to be able to communicate clearly. And now, once again, unless there is clear communication, then people are not going to know exactly what's expected of them. And then when you don't carry out the task exactly as the manager wanted you to, it could lead to conflict. So communication is very, very important. It's critical. So there always needs to be open and clear communication between management and the workers. Otherwise, we're definitely going to have conflict. Secondly, we need to be aware of the fact that usually there are going to be differences in our goals and objectives. So as a manager and as a worker, our goals and objectives are not always going to be exactly the same. So we do need to bear that in mind. As management, well, we want the business to be as profitable as possible. As workers, we want job satisfaction, and we want to know that we are going to be remunerated fairly for whatever job is expected of us. So that in itself could lead to conflict, the fact that we have different sets of goals and objectives. So once again, communication will help to overcome that particular problem. Thirdly, personal matters could cause conflict. Right, you had a bad day at home, and now you bring whatever conflict you had outside of the workplace into the workplace. Or perhaps you have a personal conflict with a particular individual, but or a difference with somebody else. That will definitely lead to conflict. Fourthly, discrimination. Discrimination is definitely going to lead to conflict. If people feel that they are discriminated against for whatever reason, it's got nothing to do with the way in which you perform your job. It's got to do with totally external factors. Because of your gender, perhaps, that you feel management favors a particular gender, or they favor a particular religious group, or cultural group, or race, etc. That will definitely lead to conflict. Right, and you can see here, you've got to be able to expand on it. You've got to give the 4 reasons, and then you've got to explain each one like I have done, to be able to get your 12 marks. So here, each aspect that you're going to mention will count 3 marks. So you mention it, and then you elaborate on it. That's why it says describe. Let's take a short ad break. After the break, we will come back and we will continue with the more direct type of questions. Welcome back from the ad break. Let's continue with our direct questions and how to answer them. So let's look at question 6. In question 6, list 5 steps which a business organization should follow in order to solve problems which might arise in the workplace. So there are 3 things here. You've got to list. You don't need to explain in too much detail. Secondly, they want 5. And thirdly, what is it about? It's about resolving conflict in the workplace. Now, in order to resolve conflict, the first step is always going to be to identify exactly what is it that's causing the conflict. So that's always going to be our first step. identify. Right, identify the problem or the cause of the problem. Secondly, now that you know what the problem is, we need to go into a little bit more depth. And we need to look at, well, what exactly contributed to this problem or to the issue or to the conflict. So we need to analyze it a little bit more. So we need to assess the cause of the problem. Thirdly, in assessing the cause of the problem, it's always going to be important to collect as much information as you can as possible. It's almost like when you are in a court case. You need to get as much evidence as possible. You know exactly what the court case is about. You've identified. Now you need to know, well, what led to this particular issue. We need information. So information is key. So that's the third point. We need to collect information. So in assessing what caused this problem, we're going to need information. We've got to get people to tell us exactly what led to the problem. Otherwise, we're not going to know how to actually address it. Right, so now that we've got the information, we need to look at a way forward. What is it that we can possibly do based on the information that we've collected about what is it that might have caused this problem? What are possible solutions? We always need to come up with a way of resolving the problem. So possible solutions would be our next step. And now, of course, we need to look at, well, what do we think, after discussion, is the best way of solving the problem. So step number 5, select the best solution. Right? Which after communication and after we've discussed it, what do both parties believe would be the best way to move forward? Other things you could have mentioned here is, well, you need to implement the solution. Well, it's no good we have agreed on how to solve the solution and then we don't do anything about it. So we do need to implement it as well. So you could have mentioned that as well, but you were asked to explain 5 steps. So those 5 steps will give you the 10 marks. Question 7. Now in question 7, you are going to be given different scenarios, and then you've got to look at, well, what is the particular strategy that the business would have followed in each. So these are a little bit more application type of questions again. So you're going to be given an example, and based on your knowledge, you're going to have to work out what would have been the best strategy for the business to have followed. So this is actually from Learning Outcome 1, where you looked at the different types of strategies that a business can implement in order to adapt to or to overcome the challenges in the business environment, especially in the macro environment. So let's look at each one. First one, a business enterprise sells 2 delivery vehicles to pay its creditors. So it almost looks to me as if this business is downscaling. They're getting rid of some of their resources. So that's the strategy that they're following in order to pay people to whom they owe money. So they're going to sell some of their assets to pay off the loans or to pay their creditors. So they're almost divesting. Right? So that's definitely the strategy which they are following. They are reducing their resources. So the answer there would be that they are divesting. The next one, New Look Furniture Factory buys a farm with tree plantations. So the one business is a factory, and now they are buying a farm with tree plantations. So definitely if it's a furniture factory, they are going to need timber or wood. That's their main raw material. So they're now buying the source of materials. So they are integrating, they're joining up with another business. So it's a form of integration. It's a different type of business that they're integrating with, and it's backwards. So it's backwards integration. Right? Backward integration. You also could have answered here vertical integration, because two ways of integrating vertically would be backwards and forwards. Right, so just get it that when you integrate and it's on a vertical level, it means it's different types of businesses which join up. In this case, the factory took over a supplier, the supplier of wood or timber. So therefore it was a backward integration. Forward would have been, for example, if the furniture factory took over a retail store selling furniture. Right, then they go into the tertiary sector. That would have been forward integration. Okay, so in this case it's backward integration. Number 3, South African business that has been selling designer clothing in South Africa only is now selling their products in France. So what are they doing? They're no longer looking at the local market only. They're going to export to another country as well. But they are going to export the same product. So it's the same designer clothing which they have been selling in South Africa. They're now going to take it to a different market. So the strategy has definitely got something to do with market. So that's going to be part of your answer here. And what are they doing with the market? They are developing their market. They are actually growing their market. They're taking an existing product into a different market. So it's market development. But another answer here could have been market penetration. You know, you get different types of intensifying your market. Market penetration would have been if I take the existing product and I actually penetrate the existing, I grow the existing market even more. Right, over here I'm just taking existing products and I'm taking it into new markets. So that's why it's not market penetration, okay? Don't get confused with the two. It's market development. I'm growing, I'm developing the market outside the existing one. Next one. A cell phone shop starts to sell microwave ovens. So they are now really starting to sell something totally different. It's not the same product at all. But they used to sell cell phones and related products, and now they're going into a completely different product. So they are diversifying. Right, so we've got diversification here. We're no longer going to focus on cell phones only. We're now also going to sell something totally different, right? Namely microwave ovens. And we're hoping that this would actually appeal to new customers. So it's a diversification strategy. 7.5, an existing communication company charges lower rates per call than other companies. So you are lowering your prices in order to take market share away from your competition. So you want to grow your market share, which means you want to penetrate the market, existing market more. So that's market penetration. Right, so it's still an intensifying type of strategy, and it is market penetration. So it's important that you go and you revise all those different types of strategies again, because you can see you may be asked to actually apply your knowledge. Like we've had here, where they've given you practical examples, and now you had to use your knowledge and you actually had to apply it to each of the examples. Question number 8, much more straightforward again. State 4 functions of trade union. So basically, what's the function or the role of a trade union? Why would workers want to join a trade union? What is it that the trade union can do for them? That's what you need to bear in mind, and that's what your answer should be. Now, trade unions are definitely there to promote the interests of their members, being the workers. So that's always a very important function of any trade union. So that would be the first one. Promote the interests of your members, or the workers who have decided to join your union. In line with that, like, for example, what? It would normally be to secure better benefits for the workers. Right, and the benefits could mean remuneration, it could mean things like housing allowance, medical insurance, all those different types, pension fund or provident fund, right? Those are the type of things to actually negotiate on behalf of the members. Third one, to protect the rights of the members. So that's why trade union is there, to make sure that they protect the rights of their members, being the workers in the workplace. Whatever those rights may be, to make sure that the employer is not going to violate the workers' rights. Fourthly, the trade union is there to mediate between the workers and the employer whenever there's a grievance. So to assist the workers in resolving grievances that they may have with their employer. So that would be a good fourth one to give here. So resolve grievances in the workplace. As you can see from the functions of the trade union, they really play a critical role in labour relations. Let's take an ad break, and then we will come back and focus on more of these direct type of questions. Welcome back from the ad break, and let's look at the next direct question. In this question 9, it's about pricing of goods in rural areas and sexual harassment. How that could challenge ethical and professional behavior. Also, recommend how these forms of unethical behavior can be addressed by business organizations. We just extend our page here. They want you to answer 2 things in this question. Firstly, pricing of goods in rural areas, and secondly, sexual harassment. The question indicates that both these could be unethical business practices. So if we look at the first one, there could be the fact that quite often in rural areas the prices tend to be much higher than urban areas. Why is that the case? Firstly, it could be because there's little competition. And due to less competition, you find that businesses in those areas tend to charge more because they know there's nobody else that I can go to as a consumer, so I've got to make use of your business, and now they're going to charge me more. There's nothing wrong with charging a bit more, but when you go and you're totally unreasonable and you charge very high prices to people who normally cannot afford it, and when they don't have an alternative shop to go to, that would definitely be unethical. So that could be one of the reasons. A second one, why businesses often charge much more, could be infrastructure. It's difficult to get goods to those areas, and secondly, it's difficult for people in those areas to go and shop elsewhere. They've got to perhaps travel long distances, firstly, but secondly also to travel that distance can take much longer than it would in an area where the roads are very good, you've got much better transport, you can take taxis and buses and there are trains, which may be lacking in those areas. So again, people are almost forced to go and buy from those shops and then get totally overcharged for the goods that they go and buy from the shop. So as the shopkeeper, it would be unethical for me to charge these totally unreasonable type of prices. A third one could be, well, I'm charging more because I'm also, as the shopkeeper, I'm paying more for the goods that I'm selling. And the transport cost is more because of the longer distances that I have to transport the goods to get them to my shop. So transport costs can definitely add to it. But that doesn't mean that I must be unreasonable. Right, so that's the first part. Why quite often in rural areas they tend to charge more, but it becomes a problem when it's unreasonable and I almost double the prices. That type of situation. The second one, sexual harassment. So it's important to understand what that means. It could be advances that are made at the workplace. It could even be sexual type of jokes with sexual connotations that will definitely be viewed by some people as harassment, and that they could take offense to that, and as workers we need to be aware of that, and that it would be unethical of me to engage in such practices. So any type of sexual advance or even making jokes, anything like that would constitute sexual harassment. Now, when does it become unethical? When it's either physical or verbal type of abuse. So any physical or even, like I said, even jokes could constitute sexual harassment. Secondly, it would be a violation of people's basic human rights. So because of that in itself, it would be unethical. And thirdly, especially when people use their seniority, so they are maybe in a higher position than I am, and that they then abuse that power, and that people are then quite often too scared to go and report it. But I mean, that would also constitute sexual harassment when there's abuse of power. And I use that higher position that I have to make sexual advances to fellow colleagues or workers. Okay, so that would give us the 12 marks, because we've got 3 points under pricing of goods and we've got 3 under sexual harassment. So in total 6 times 2 is going to give me the 12 marks. In question 10, you can see we've got a graph. So this is about the presentation of business information, where businesses quite often prefer to present information in a graphical or visual form. It just makes it so much easier for people to very quickly, at a glance, capture what the business is trying to communicate. Could be information in tables and different graphs. So let's look at what the type of questions are here that they want us to answer. If we look at the graph, it's about sales of jackets in thousands of rands, firstly. And secondly, we've got June, July, August, September over 4 months. And then if we analyze that graph, we can see clearly in June, the sales were approximately 90,000. We look at July, it's slightly lower at 80,000, and then it starts to drop. August, 50,000, and then in September it's right down to 20,000. Now let's look at the product. It's jackets. Even before we look at the questions, what could be a possible reason for the drop in sales? Well, if it's jackets, normally people are going to buy more jackets when it's cold. And if you look at the graph, June, July are the months when this business sold most jackets. So those are the colder winter months. People are cold, they tend to go out and buy warmer clothing like jerseys and jackets. As the weather starts to, the temperature starts to increase and the weather starts to get warmer, you're going to find consumers tend to buy less and less of these type of products. They're going to buy fewer jackets, fewer jerseys, hence the drop in sales. Let's look at the questions. First one, identify the type of graph. Right, now what types of graphs do we get? We get line graphs, we get bar graphs, we get histograms, and we get pie charts. Now if we look at this one, you can clearly see there are bars. Right, you can see there are bars in this graph. Now, so therefore it's either got to be a bar graph or a histogram. When is it going to be a histogram? It's going to be a histogram when these bars actually touch each other. So we had another graph over there and another one over there. That would have been a histogram. You can see these graphs are clearly separate, so it's a bar graph. Okay, so that's our answer here. It's a bar graph. So it's simply identify the graph. The second one, which month represents the higher sales? Now from the explanation earlier, and if we look back at the graph, we can clearly see it is June. So that would be our answer there. Why? What could be the reasons for the sales being so high? In my early explanation, I've already given you the first reason. Because it was winter, colder temperatures. So that's definitely your first reason that you're going to give there. And secondly, you're then going to say, well, because of the colder weather, customers or consumers will tend to buy more jackets. So it's firstly the weather, and then because of the colder weather, the consumers or the customers are going to go out there and they're going to buy more jackets. Let's look at the next question. Name 2 strategies which you could use to improve the sales performance for September. Now you can see in September the sales were very low. And I've explained to you earlier it's probably because the temperature has increased. So no need for people to go out and buy jackets. So what is it that you can do to increase the sales? Perhaps you could drop the prices of the jackets. If you still have jackets left from winter and you want to get rid of those jackets, you may have to drop the prices. So have a promotion, so drop prices. That will definitely help you to sell more products. Something else that you're going to have to do, you're going to have to rely less on only selling jackets. Diversify your products. Sell different products so when the temperature starts to increase, that the customers can buy products that are more suitable for summer, for example. So secondly, I would say diversify. Thank you for paying such careful attention, and now remember to go out and study your work thoroughly and do the best you can in business studies.